my lab, we try to understand how cells maintain and protect their DNA. Now, DNA is the fundamental unit of life and encodes all information required for life within it. Yet, this really important molecule is quite unstable. It faces DNA damage and stress from both internal and external factors. I like to say that life itself is damaged. As soon as life begins, you have all these factors that can trigger damage to DNA. And in my lab, we try to understand how cells know there is damage and then how they figure out or use mechanisms to fix this damage, sometimes with error and sometimes without error. I came across this talk by my future PhD mentor where he was showing this really dramatic image of a bacterial cell with the DNA out in gray. Now, this DNA was this long threads that could be seen in this micrograph and is compacted nearly 1,000-fold to sit inside this tiny volume. And within this tiny space, the DNA is replicated, it's maintained and propagated so that life can emerge in the way we see it right now. And this blew my mind. How does something so large fit into something so small, yet maintain all of its function, not just for one generation, but for millions of generations? And this is where my journey into understanding how genomes get packaged and how genomes get maintained started. DNA damage is a threat to life because DNA is the building block encoding all information. Having damage to that information will result in cells not having the ability to survive. And so fixing DNA damage is important for cell survival. There are some statistics that suggest that even in our own cells, an average human cell faces 10,000 DNA damages per cell per day. Yet this gets fixed accurately most of the time, right? We don't know that there is damage occurring. We know it occurs when things go wrong. So when DNA damage is not fixed, you get errors, you get mutations, you get genomic rearrangements, and all of this results in a cellular misfunction. In case of disease context, it's the underlying cause of many pathologies such as cancers. It's the driver of aging in humans. And in bacteria, such types of DNA damages can also trigger some forms of resilience that enables them to develop antibiotic resistance. And so studying how we maintain our DNA and repair it and fix it when it is damaged is important to also understand how all of these pathologies also evolve in our context. I'm really fascinated by the ability to see the invisible. And I think this is what sort of shaped my excitement and interest in pursuing questions about the genome. The first time I saw how microscopy could be used to look not just at a whole organism, but at proteins and pathways within a given cell, it just blew my mind that there is so much going on in the inner workings of a cell that keep life going, and that we have a tool, we have the ability to look at this happening in real time. And I think that's really shaped the core of my scientific journey, to see the invisible and see how the invisible aspects of life actually tick and make cellular life happen. A really exciting question that we've been thinking about is the question of homology search. How do you find an exact match inside the cell? Think about this. Imagine two people going inside a large crowded environment and they get separated at the beginning. Now person A has to find person B and the match has to be exact, right? The same thing happens inside a cell. A piece of DNA has to find its exact match inside the cell. And then it has to do this via sampling millions and millions of bases of DNA to read the right sequence that matches the target that it's looking for. And in the cell, this happens remarkably accurately and remarkably fast. And so we've been using imaging technologies to watch search happen inside the cell. We've been watching how a bit of DNA goes around, moves around in the cell to find an exact match. And the ability of using imaging technologies has enabled us to actually find proteins or molecular motors that enable search to happen efficiently. And this has allowed now for us to solve mysteries that have been inaccessible for an answer in the past. And this comes really because of the power of imaging. Our studies enable us to understand how DNA is preserved, but also how it can be changed by cells, right? And the ability to change is important for evolution. If you cannot change your underlying genetic makeup, you do not have the ability to adapt to new environments or to challenging or stressful conditions. And cells are very resilient systems. They have the ability to adapt and change under stress. Microbes especially are very, very adaptable. They're able to colonize all sorts of environments, and this is because of their ability to incorporate change into their genetic makeup. And our studies reveal mechanisms or pathways that enable this change. They tell us when these changes can occur, how they occur, and how many cells in a given population mutate themselves in response to stress. This has profound implications for our understanding of how evolution occurs. It also has implications for our understanding of pathologies, diseases, emergence of antibiotic resistance, for example. Although we uncover fundamental mechanisms of genome maintenance, they do reveal paths taken by cells to enable their adaptation under stress. Winning the Infosys prize is really one of a peak moment in my career. It's a deeply affirming and motivating event. Doing fundamental discovery-oriented science is a slow endeavor and is not really rooted in immediate translational outcomes. It's instead driven by curiosity. And having this prize acknowledge such fundamental discovery, deep mechanistic science is very confidence building and motivating for us to continue on this journey further. And doing such science is really not an individual endeavor at all. It is a reflection of the deep commitment and hard work of several PhD students, research scholars, postdoctoral fellows, mentors and collaborators who've all sort of come together in this collective effort to solve some of the questions we've tackled. And so the award is not just about an individual science, but really all of us as a group. And it's also an acknowledgement of ecosystems that nurture such curiosity-driven, mechanistic biology. I think this is an acknowledgement of ecosystems that enable such science also, and institutions that enable such science also. I think this prize also has a lot of meaning for highlighting how globally impactful science can come out of Indian institutions. It sort of enforces the commitment that we should have as a collective to tackle these deep mechanistic questions in biology, because these types of questions provide a foundation on which many applications can be built in the long term. And they also provide a very healthy foundation for a scientific, curiosity-driven mindset in our country. And so I think this prize also really sheds or puts a spotlight on encouraging future researchers to think about such a pursuit, to going towards the new frontiers of unanswered questions and pursuing things that would have really long-term future impact for our society. I would advise young scientists to be curious and persistent in the face of uncertainty. Fundamental science is a slow and not always immediately rewarding endeavor. And it's really important to stay the course when obstacles come in your way. In fact, obstacles and shortcomings or obstacles and failures should not be seen as personal shortcomings. They're just part of what the system throws at you. And I think staying resilient in light of that is really, really important. It's really important to build supportive networks around you, seek out good mentors, and don't do this individually. It is a community effort. So work with other people to get your science going. And most importantly, I think it's really important to be brave to ask the questions that really matter to you. Many times genes can move between species that have very little relationship with each other. And when this movement happens, they bring with them new function, right? And it brings the ability for an organism to change itself, to explore a new diversity. And I'm very fascinated about this path of how these building blocks can change and move across species over time. Something that is coming from outside becomes then part of the fabric of the system. And so sort of going ahead, the idea is to try and tackle this question, to try and understand these paths by which DNA can move, bring diversity with it, and become part of an existing fabric. And there's no better time than now to try and answer this question. Imaging technologies have gotten to a point where they give us such a fantastic handle to answer this question with precision in space. And at long sort of evolutionary timescales, we can use these fantastic computational tools now to infer these movements of DNA. For example, I'm here right now at Imperial College as an Eric and Wendy Schmidt Global Faculty Fellow to learn and develop AI-based tools to answer this question. And I really have to say it's such an incredible privilege as an academic to be able to build and learn a brand new skill and incorporate it into this long-term journey of the lab to answer this question of how something foreign or something outside can move around in the environment and at some point land up inside a cell and become part of the fabric of that system.